Hi friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. Today, as you can see, we're in my kitchen and we've got a really exciting project planned. Today we're going to be water glassing eggs. And this is going to be my very first time water glassing eggs. But I mean, take a look at this. You can see my chickens are in overdrive right now. Right now we're getting more eggs than we can really eat. And we want to preserve some for the winter. Now there's one big reason why we want to preserve some of these eggs for the winter, which is that if you've ever had chickens before, you know that they tend to take the winter off from laying. Usually in the fall sometime leading up to winter, they're going to molt, they'll shed out all their old feathers, and they'll grow new feathers so that they can stay nice and warm and toasty over the winter. But regrowing all those feathers takes a lot of energy, and so chickens don't usually have enough extra to put into laying eggs during that time. So during the molt, you can count on significantly fewer if you get any eggs. And then following the molt, we go into winter where there's lower daylight hours, especially where I live in Connecticut. I'm pretty far north. And so around here, chickens don't really lay very much in the winter. We don't use any supplemental lighting to kind of force them to artificially lay in the winter. And so we need to be prepared for a winter with very few to no eggs. So right now, while we are getting so many eggs, more eggs than we can really use, we are going to start preserving them. Now this is completely new to me. I've never water glassed eggs before. So I'm just gonna kind of take you through the process. I'll let you know what seems easy, what seems tricky. If there's any troubleshooting that I do, you'll be here to see all of it. So I'm going to bring you over here and we're going to talk about what we need to water glass our eggs. Now the first and most obvious thing that you're going to need to water glass eggs is eggs. Now if you're wondering if you can just use any eggs for this, if you can go to the store and you can get eggs from the store and use those, the answer, unfortunately, is no. For this, you are going to need fresh eggs and they are going to need to be unwashed. Eggs that you get in the store are usually several weeks, if not a month or more old by the time you get them, and they've had the bloom washed off of them. Now, if you're unfamiliar with fresh eggs, when they're first laid, they come out with a coating called a bloom. Now, a lot of times you can't even see it. Some eggs is more obvious than others. We don't have any chickens that lay eggs with a really heavy bloom, so there won't be anything really noticeable. But you can kind of see a little bit of a coating on this egg. The chickens lay their eggs with bloom to protect the eggs, because the chicken isn't laying their egg to feed us. The chicken is laying their egg because naturally they want to reproduce and keep their species going. So those eggs are going to need to be protected for several weeks until they're able to hatch. And that bloom is the exact reason why eggs from your backyard chickens are safe to keep on your counter for several weeks, as opposed to eggs in the store that you have to keep in the refrigerator. So you need fresh eggs. You need eggs that are unwashed because they have a bloom. You also need eggs that are clean. Now the problem is you can't wash your eggs, so you need eggs that come out of the chicken pretty clean. So what you're going to want to do is each day, as you go to collect your chicken eggs, you're going to examine them. And whatever eggs you have that are clean, that are free of debris, that are free of any dirt smears or anything else that may be on them, those are the eggs you're going to want to choose. You obviously don't want to choose eggs that are cracked or damaged in any way. You want to basically choose the best looking eggs. So for example, these eggs here, you can see they have a few little smears on them. They're not too dirty. They're perfectly edible, but I'm not going to choose these to use as my eggs to preserve. I'm going to choose the most pristine eggs that I have. You also want them to be very fresh. So as I mentioned, what you're going to do, we're going to mix our solution, and then each day as we collect our eggs, we're going to add the cleanest eggs from that day into the solution. So let's talk about what we're going to use to make our solution. So I got this bulk bag of, this is calcium hydroxide. You can also find it labeled as pickling lime. It's a lot more cost effective to get a big bulk bag like this than to get the small bags that are marketed for pickling. Basically what we're going to do is we are going to mix this with water at a ratio of 1 ounce of this calcium hydroxide to 1 quart of water. And this is basically going to fill in the air holes in the eggshells, which is going to prevent them from spoiling. So the next thing you're going to need is a container to store your preserved eggs in. I have here a 2-gallon food grade bucket. Food grade for obvious reasons. We're going to be keeping food in it, and so we want it to be safe and preserved. You can see that I have this bucket fitted with a gamma lid. Now the gamma lid is this 2-part lid here. You can see it has this ring that attaches onto the bucket, and then it has this part on the top that unscrews. That allows for easy access. If you have a regular lid, you're going to have to pry it off every time you want to access your eggs, which is not practical. So gamma lid is the way to go. So we've got that. As I said, this is 2 gallons. You could use a 5-gallon bucket if you want. We're going with 2-gallon buckets because it's going to be, the eggs will be more accessible. We're going to want to take the eggs from the bottom first because those will be the older eggs, which will be much easier to manage in this 2-gallon bucket. And this will also be much lighter in case we need to move it. Because we're measuring our calcium hydroxide or our lime by weight, which, by the way, this is not the same as lime that you would get at a home improvement store. It's not the same as garden lime, so don't confuse the two. So we are going to need something to weigh our calcium hydroxide in. So I've got my handy dandy little kitchen scale and a bowl. So we're going to get started by mixing up our solution. So I'm planning to do 4 ounces of our calcium hydroxide to 4 quarts of water. Now, I would recommend here that you do as I say and not as I do. I'm not wearing gloves for this because I don't have gloves right now. I have heard reports of people saying that this can dry out your skin if you don't wear gloves. So if you have gloves, definitely wear them. I'm not going to, as I said, I'm going to be very careful to touch this as little as possible and wash my hands frequently throughout this process. So first, what I'm going to do is I am going to measure out 4 ounces of this calcium hydroxide. So I'm going to turn on our scale. I want to make sure that it's set to ounces because that's what we're measuring. So it's set to ounces. You also want to make sure it's set to 0. Notice I have this bowl on top of the scale. We don't want to include that in our weight. So if you turn it on before you add the bowl, then you add your bowl, it's going to include that weight. Just hit your tare button, that will reset it to 0. So you can see here, my scale is at 0. So we're going to scoop out our lime and get measuring it. I'm just using a little measuring cup as a scoop here. Just gonna see. So that's 1.6 ounces, we need a little more. You also want to be careful not to inhale this powder. So just try to be careful. If it floats up into the air at all, just be careful not to inhale it. All right, I went just a smidge over, so I'm going to scoop a little bit of that out. A smidge over again. All right, there we go. My scale is not the most precise. So we have our 4 ounces. So I'm going to pour this into our bucket. I'm going to add our 4 quarts of water and then I'm going to mix it up thoroughly. I'm also going to wash my hands in case I got any of the lime on my hands. Okay, so we've got our solution all mixed. I think I forgot to mention before that you want room temperature water, you don't want hot water, and you don't want icy cold water. So I just use my tap water. We have a well, so we have good water for this. If you have city water with a lot of chlorine and other chemicals in it, you are going to want to look into possibly using spring water instead, or I've heard that some people will boil their water to remove the fluoride and other chemicals that are in it. So whatever your water situation is, do your research and see what works best for you. Because I have good well water for this, I'm using my tap water. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to look through our eggs here. I'm only going to take from the very top because those are the ones from this past day. I'm going to choose the cleanest ones to put into this bucket. And then as we go on, each day, I'm going to add eggs to this bucket. And probably by the end of the summer, we will have a second or maybe even a third bucket as well. We'll have lots of eggs ready for winter. I'm not going to use this egg because you can see that it has a little smear of dirt on it. This one looks really good. This doesn't have any dirt, doesn't have any debris on it, and it doesn't have any cracks. So this is going to be our first egg that I'm going to lower very carefully into the bucket here. I'm using the spoon because, as I said, I don't have gloves on and I don't want to dry out my skin. So I'm just going to look through the top layer of eggs and add a few more to our bucket. So I've gotten our solution off to a really good start. We put 4 eggs in the bucket for today. I'm going to continue to add eggs each day until we get a nice full bucket. So I started off with 4 quarts of solution. If it turns out that that's not enough for the bucket, I can mix up another little bit of solution. It's the ratio of 1 quart of water to 1 ounce of lime. So if I need to top off my eggs with a little bit more, then I'll do that. I'll add another quart and another ounce of lime. So it was really incredibly easy. I know I said I was going to try to troubleshoot with you guys as we go. I don't think we had anything to troubleshoot. So the only test remaining is to see how well this works. So I am going to do regular updates on these eggs. We'll probably start early this winter whenever our chickens kind of taper off with egg production. So in maybe 6 months or so, we'll do an update. We'll test some of the eggs that we've preserved and we'll see how well they held up. This is a great preserving option if you have more eggs than you can handle. Now, especially, we don't have a freeze dryer. That is a really popular way to preserve eggs now, but this is a nice low-tech way. It doesn't require any freezer space. It doesn't require any special equipment. The only unusual ingredient is the calcium hydroxide, but really that is not that hard to find. I got mine at Azure Standard, but I'm sure you could find it many other places as well. We're hoping that this is going to be one step to helping us really be able to get through that $50 February challenge that we're participating in, along with a lot of other content creators. We're pretty excited about that, and so this is going to be something that is really going to help us out because February is a time when we would most likely have an egg shortage if we didn't have eggs preserved ahead of time. So I hope that you will try this preserving technique. If you have any experience, if you've water glassed eggs before, leave a comment and let me and let everyone else know how well it worked for you. Let us know how long you were able to keep your eggs fresh. Most estimates that I've read have said between 12 to 18 months, although some people say as long as 2 years. I don't anticipate needing to go that long because next spring our chickens will be ramping up production again. But my real goal here is just to get us through the winter months. So we're using these months of abundance to get us through the months that are a little bit trickier to get through with just what your homestead can produce on its own. So one thing I did not mention is that you want to store your bucket of eggs, or you don't have to use a bucket. You could use a jar, you could use any kind of food safe container that works for you. One reason we use the plastic bucket is because it will hold more than most jars. It is also not as easily breakable, and so we want to make sure that our eggs are as safe as possible. But I know that some people like to avoid the use of plastic, so if you choose to use glass, let us know how it goes. So we're going to be storing our eggs in the basement where it's always cool and dark, and we're hoping that our eggs should get us through this winter. I will definitely be reporting back and give you guys the results. Until next time, I'll see you guys soon. I hope that you have a great day. Bye guys, I'll see you later.